We will first create the migration, model, and controller that we need to create a post. So I'll come to the terminal and I'll say PHP artisan make model, and I'll give it a name of post, and I'll also create a migration and a controller. When that is done, let's go ahead and define how we want our posts table to look like. So I'll grab the code for that and then I'll explain. Now the posts table should have a column of title of the posts. We will also have a slug. We will also need to know the person who created that post. So we'll need a user ID, and that will reference the ID on users table, so that if we have that ID, we can be able to get the details of that user. And on delete, we cascade, and that means when we delete a user, we should also delete all posts associated with that user. And then here we'll also have a category ID to know the category that is attached to that post. On reference, it references ID on categories table so that we can get the details of that category. Then on delete, we also cascade. Then we are also going to save the image path. We cannot save an image in the database. So what we are going to do, we are going to save the path to that image, and then we are going to save the image in Laravel. Then we are also going to have the text body. That's all we need for this tutorial. After that, I'll just run the migration. PHP artisan migrate. Sorry, we have a typo. Yeah, and now if I switch to my GUI and I refresh my tables, I have the posts table now, and this is how it should look like. With that said, now let's go ahead to our, we can close this, we no longer need that. Let's come to our create posts component and implement the logic that we need to grab the data that we need to send to the backend. So first of all, we will implement things that we've already covered. For example, the success message. So I'll just grab that HTML here, and I'll have it here, and I'll modify this to posts created successfully instead of category. And since we are checking for the success property, we need to create that. So here we'll have data which returns an object, and here we will have success, and by default it will be false. Okay, now after that, let's go ahead and now grab the title. So we no longer need the name attribute, so we will use the model fields dot title just as before in other resources that we were creating. So fields dot title, and then here we will have that fields, and it will be an empty object. Let's also go ahead and add the code for displaying errors in case we have errors. I'll just come here, I'll grab this, and I'll just modify it. All this should be easy at this point. Then it's title and not name. Great. And then since we are now grabbing something from the data errors.title, we need to create that errors property. So here we'll have errors, and it will be an empty object by default. After that, I think we are good there. Let's now switch to images. Here we cannot use vmodel because vmodel doesn't support input with a type of file. So we are going to use at input, and that means if something is selected, we can do something. Let's call a method that we will use to grab the file. So I can call the method grab file. Then let's go ahead and create that method. So here I'll have my methods, and the first one is grab file. I'll pass the event object. Let's console log it and see what we get. This will help us to grab the file. So let's see from scratch how this works. Come back, refresh to see, to ensure you don't have any errors. Yes, we don't. Select an image, and this is our event object. So to get the image, the file that we want, we will take the event object, then dot target. After target, we'll go dot files. Dot files. I'm not sure why my texts are distorted. It's back, it's good. Dot files. Then after dot files, we can see that we have a file list and we have our file, and the name is pushups, and you can see here it's pushups. So to get our file, it is event.target.files. Then this will return an array. So since we only have one image, we will grab the first element which has an index of 0. So to grab our file, we'll come here, we will console log it to see if it's working. So it's e.target.files, then the first one. Let's see what we get. Clear the console. Then you can see that now we are getting the file. So at the end of the day, we want to send our fields. So our file should be inside the fields. So what I'll do, I'll grab this and I'll have a constant, and I'll say file. Our file should be equal to this one. Then this dot fields dot file will now be equal to the file that we've created. So now we have our file. Let's go ahead and display when a user uploads an image. Let's go ahead and display the preview of that image. So we will come just below that here. I'll create a div with a class of preview. Class of preview. Then here I'll have an image tag. Then here I'll bind the URL. So we need a URL target to display that image. We need to create it somehow. We will see how we will create it. So we will have URL. Let's go ahead and have that in our data. So here we can say URL. By default, it will be an empty string. So if you come now and refresh, you won't see anything because it's an empty string, so we cannot be able to see the image. This is how we create that URL. So here we can say this dot URL. So we are going to change this from an empty string is equal to, we will use the URL object, and then here dot, you can see that you have several methods here. We will use the create object URL. Then you just need to pass the file that you want the browser to create a URL for you. So I'll just say file, and what this will do, the browser will create a URL for the file that we've uploaded. And since we have the URL, this will change. And if that changes, since it's reactive, this will also change. And now we'll have a URL for an image. So if I save this, go back to the browser, I upload an image. There we go, we have its preview. Let's go ahead and change its styles. I feel like it's too big. So I already have those styles, so I'll just grab them. Should be here. There we go. It's just 2 lines of codes. So maximum width 100% and maximum height of 120 pixels. So if I come back and refresh, at least I think this is better. I like this one more. Okay, after that, let's include the code for showing an error in case we have an error. So I'll have it here, and I'll change this from title to file. Great. Now let's go ahead to the categories. So here we will use, you don't need the name since you're going to use vModel. So we will say fields dot category ID. So remember, we are expecting an ID, the category ID in the backend. That's why I'm using category ID. Okay, now if you continue, we don't have the categories. We need to fetch them from the database. So what we are going to do, we will create here a categories property, categories, and by default it will be an empty array. Then I'm not going to create the logic to fetch the categories. We already have that in categories list, since we are fetching categories in categories list. So I'll just come here, and here's the method. Then I'll grab this, then come back, and here I'll say when this component is mounted, kindly run that. So we already have this API. We don't have to do anything. So now that we have our categories, we can come here. I'll delete these two. I'll leave this hard-coded, the select option. We need it always. Then here I'm going to loop through this category. So V for category in categories. Then the key, I'm going to use the category ID since it will be unique. Category dot ID. Then here let's output the category name. Category dot name. And the value that we want to send to the backend, it's category ID. What's happening? No, we don't need all that. Sorry. You just need to bind this and then use category ID. Category dot ID. Then save that. Let's see that. If we have our categories, then refresh. Unfortunately, oh, I think we have them. Yeah, we have them, sports, nature. But now notice that we don't see our select option the way it was before. So to fix that, I'll come here, and then where we have selected disabled, we no longer need selected. We are not using that. So we'll just have it as disabled. Then we'll give it a value of an empty string. And then by default, we will come to our data fields, and we'll have category ID, category ID. By default, it will be an empty string. And what will happen is, since by default it's an empty string, so when we load this page, it will check fields.category ID. It's an empty string. And since here for the other options, the value will be different, will be IDs, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, but here will be empty string. So it will take whatever is empty and it will select it, and it will be like it has been selected. So if I save this and come back, now we have our select option the way it's supposed to be, and that is nice. Okay, after that, let's have the code for displaying errors, and that should be after the select tag, and this should be category ID. We will use category ID for now, but we will customize this so that our error message makes sense, not displaying. You're supposed to provide a category ID. Okay, so after that, what else do we need? We need the text area. So we don't need this name attribute. We will use vModel, and that is fields dot body. And I think we are good. So if a user clicks submit, let's listen for that submit event here, no, in the form. So at submit, then let's prevent default. Then we are going to call a method called submit. Let's go ahead and create that method. So here, after grab files, let's have submit. And for now, let's just console log what we are getting, and that's it, nothing else. So console log fields, this dot fields, to be sure that we are getting everything that we intend to get. So let's go back. Let's fill the form, fill the image, and then click submit. And yes, we get category ID, the title, the body, and the file. We have everything we need. So now we are ready to post, to send our data to the API, and then the API will do its thing. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. So here, I'm not going to type everything. I'll paste some code here and I'll explain what is happening. And I'm pasting because this is something that we've already done. So I'll get this submit, it ends here, come back here, replace this, and let's remove this. Okay, now what we are doing is that we are sending our data to API/posts, then we are sending our fields object, and since we are using an image in our form, we need to include this in the headers of our request, content type multipart form data. Otherwise, it will not work when you're using an image. After that, if it is successful, we want to reset the fields to empty, the URL that we used to show the image preview to null. Then this dot category ID, remember we had this as an empty string by default. We want it to be reset. Then success to true so that we can see the success message. The errors, we need to clear any errors we had. Then we set a timeout. This is something that we've already done, to return the success to false so that we can hide the success message. And if there is an error, we will catch all the errors here and save them in the errors object. That's all. So with that, let's go ahead and create our API. And before we do that, I've remembered there is something I've not explained, which is very important. This line, when we do this, we create a URL in the browser. And with time, the URLs that we are creating will accumulate in the browser, and this will cause memory leaks and it will affect performance. But the good thing is, most modern browsers will delete the references when you unload this document. But to be safe, it's always good to do that manually. So to delete the references whenever you unload this document, what you do is that you just use the same URL object, dot, then we have this method called revoke object URL, then you pass the file, and that way you are assured that you'll not have memory leaks which are caused by you uploading these files that you are previewing. So I'll save that. Now let's go ahead and create our API. So I'll go to our API. So here I'll grab this for posts, then here I'll have posts, paste that, and then you'll realize that I just used API posts, but here I'm using categories create. So the convention in Laravel is to use /posts and not create. We use create when we want to show a view to create the categories. So if you want, you can change this. That's why I'm using posts now, but it's not a big deal. It will still work. After that, we are going to load the controller that we created, and that is post controller. Then the store method. So let's go ahead and create that store method. So I'll go to post controller, and here I'm also going to paste the logic for that, and then I'll explain. So to here, controller, I'll grab this, come back here. So here I'll be very brief, and in case it's not clear, I have a video where I explain this in depth. The same logic that is here in the series that I did of Laravel, creating the same app with the Laravel, I explain everything in depth, but here I'm not going to do so. So in case something is not clear, I'll leave a link in the description. You can check that. So we need a post. So I'm going to import it at the top. Since we are using it, the post model, use post model. Then we have this string slug method. So use string, eliminate support. Okay, now let's go ahead and see what is happening. So we are validating the inputs that we are getting. The file should be an image and everything is required. Then if that passes, we request the title and save it in this variable. We will use it later. Then the category ID, we save it in that variable. Then we need to set the slug that we are going to use. So at the end of the day, we want something like this. So for example, if a user types the title to be something like my title. So this is what we want at the end of the day. My title, to have an hyphen, not an equal sign. Then at the end, we add an hyphen and the ID of that post. And why are we adding an ID? Since an ID of every post will be unique, so that if anyone creates another post with the same title, my post, now the ID will be different, and therefore we can be assured that the title will always be unique. So to achieve this at the end of the day, what we are going to do is that we need to know this ID of the post that we are creating before it's even created. How do we do that? First, we check the post count. If we have something in the database. If we don't have anything, it means this will evaluate to false. That's why we have this exclamation mark. So we are checking if the post count is false, it means we don't have anything in the database. Then it means the post that we are creating will automatically have an ID of 1. And that's why here we have post ID equals to 1. Then if that is not the case, so it means we have something in the database. So let's assume we have 10 posts in the database. So what will happen? We will come here and check posts latest. That will check the latest post created. Post latest first. We'll check the latest post created, the last one. Then it will check the ID. Of course, the ID will be 10. So it means the post that we are creating now, the ID will be 11. And that's why we are adding 1. So with this logic, we can be able to know the ID of the post that we are creating before it's even created. Okay, now that we have the ID, let's go ahead and create a slug. So to create a slug, we will use this string slug method. Then we will pass the title that we already have. So let's say it was this one. Then here we want the white spaces to be replaced by the hyphen. So this is what will happen up to that point. Then after that, we are going to add this hyphen, which is this one. Then we are going to add the ID that we get from this logic. So if it is 1 or 11 or whatever the ID is, and that way we are ending up with a slug that it's unique without using any package. If you want, we have packages to do that for you, but I wanted to do it without a package. Then after that, we need the user ID. Remember from our migration. So we are going to grab the authenticated. We'll use this auth method, which will fetch the authenticated user and grab their ID. After that, the body is the same thing, just request the input from the body. Image path. Now here, we will request the file. Then after that, we will use this store method. And what this does, will create an image with a unique ID for us. Then we need to specify in what, it's not a must you pass this. So if you do this, now you are specifying in what disk do you want to save the image. So in my case, I want to save it in the public disk. And the public disk is, when you scroll down, you go to storage, app, public. This is our public disk. So it means our image will be saved in here. But if you want to create a folder inside this public, you can pass it as the first argument. and that is post images. So our images will be stored in public, then inside posts images folder. After that, this will return the path to that file. Then the path to that file, what I'm doing here is that I'm adding this, I'm prepending this to that file. So this is what will happen. So we'll have something like this. So posts images, that's where we have our images. So our images are in the public disk, then posts images. Then we will have the unique ID that will be created by the store. So our image maybe will have something like this, which is unique. Then I'm appending this before this. So at the end of the day, we will have something like this. Storage, public, this is what we are going to have. And we will see later why I'm appending this. There is a reason for that. We will see it later. Then after that, we can now go ahead and create our posts since we have everything we need. So we will instantiate a new post here. And then, so now we have an empty object. Then we will set the title of the post title, to be equal to whatever we are grabbing in our request. And then we'll do the same for the rest. So post image, we have it, post user ID, we have it, and then finally we will save that. So let's save this and see if it's working. So switch back, submit, and yes, we have the validation, the title is required, the file field, category ID, but you don't have for the body. Let's see what's happening there. So for the body, let's go to here. Let's check our body. Fields.body. I think that's fine. I'm not sure why it's not working. Yeah, we don't have the code to display the error. So I'll scroll up, grab this, scroll down, paste this. Then let's change this from file to body. Okay, let's see that. Did you test this to see if it's working? Yeah, it's working. Everything is working. Now let's go ahead and post something. So I'll fill that, then fill an image, then let's select that, let's submit, and yes, we have post created successfully. Let's check the database. Where's the database? Here we go. Refresh, and yes, we have the title, the slug, user ID, category ID. We have the image path, so storage, post images, and this unique ID is created for us. We have the body. That's nice. Okay, let's see if the image is uploaded. We scroll down, let's go to our storage. Yes, post images that we created, then inside it, and yes, we have our image. Yes, it is there. That's it for this lesson. Cheers.